Hello and welcome to Story X Story, the podcast by Maya Madder that dives deep into stories across pop culture, plus gives you advice on creating your own. It's episode 195, and I'm your co host, Nigel.
I am Tazziii, content creator and co-host.
And as always, we're here bringing you interesting discussions with diverse voices. And to help us out as we venture out into the nuclear wasteland is content creator Jack Mullen. Jack, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. We have spoken before. You've been on a live podcast when we did that thing at Develop Brighton.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Got the audio for that on our podcast feed, so everyone can check that out. But first time on the regular show. Also, first time on the regular show is content creator Aisha Ahmed. Aisha, welcome.
Hey, good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Well, we've spoken a lot, but weirdly, again, first time on the show. Everyone's a first timer because we also have, and everyone's some kind of content creator. We didn't do that on purpose, but I have another content creator, kayPOWXD.
Hello, you saucy sausages.
Wow.
Thanks for joining us. We've got a full house here to talk about Fallout, so this should be interesting for listeners. Don't forget that you can subscribe to Story X Story wherever you get your podcast from. That includes Apple Podcasts and Spotify, YouTube as well now. You can also send us your feedback and questions in several ways. You can send us a voice message on our Spotify for Podcasters page. You can send us an email, studio77@mymatter.com, or you can throw your thoughts at us on social media. We are at MyMatter on Twitter, at MyMatter TV on Instagram and TikTok, or at Life of a W Gamer on Instagram and TikTok, and at Tazziii on Twitter. So you got options there. You can also join the Studio 77 Discord to be part of the MyMatter community and consider becoming a Studio 77 member to support the work that we do at MyMatter. And speaking of, before we get into today's story discussions, let's update you with the latest from the MyMatter universe. We are fast approaching the end of the year, but we are also fast approaching the release of our next manga, which is in process. So this is Origins Against All Odds, which we kickstarted long ago, the beginning of the year. And it's been slightly delayed, but is in progress. So we have the pages being worked on at the moment. This is the first in our Origins series in the My Matter universe, which is a series that's going to feature the real life characters of the My Matter team that we turned into anthropomorphic characters in the universe. So it's very meta. The first one features Tazzii's character in what will be a reflective and hope-filled manga about pursuing your creative career goals in the face of resistance from doubters and the world around you. So hopefully something that resonates with people on a similar journey. So you can check that out when it's ready. You can also check out all the other titles from the world's first manga network, which are all available at mymatter.com, and any conventions that we have coming up, which there are a couple. So we have Thought Bubble, which I've been going to for a number of years. That is on the 16th and 17th of November at the Harrogate Convention Centre. And then there's also the Malta Comic Con, which is actually before that. So if you happen to be passing through Malta, I'll also be there with some comics on the 9th and 10th of November. So you've got some options there in person, but also available online. We also have our Do I Look Like a Gamer video game representation campaign, which is a yearly initiative to promote inclusion and diversity in the video games industry and wider culture. Each year, we like to build on the work that was done in the previous year, continue that push. That means each year we do a new snapshot of 40 players and makers. Aisha was in this year's photo shoot. So that's cool. You can check out her photo and the 39 others, looklikeagamer.com. And then we do a bunch of events over the year. So we have recently come off Comic-Con, and we're going into, for November, the Friends and Family Game Design Jam. So that's on the 23rd of November. And that's a one-day event to introduce young and aspiring game developers and designers to the concept of designing games. And so we invite people to come as a group, friend group, family group, or just come in as an individual, and we'll group you on the day. So any option is fine. And then in December, we have our International Future Summit. and that is our end of year live stream, wrapping up the year of the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign, looking at the year of the games industry, which continues to be a challenging time. But it also looks forward to what future trends or things that people might want to look out for in the next year. So check that out. Thank you to Rocksteady Studios for their sponsorship of this campaign for another year. Their support has been instrumental in helping us bring this vision to life and doing so in some kind of sustainable way. And so it helps us highlight the diverse roles and people that exist in games today, and allows us to reach young people from underrepresented groups and help drive that progress in the games industry. So I look forward to hopefully continuing to work with them and others like them who want to help shape a more inclusive and diverse future for gaming. And we also have our monthly Studio 77 activities on our Twitch channel. So that's our platform where we play games for your amusement, and also host different shows with creative professionals from industries like comics and video games and animation as well. So each month we do different types of shows. We have the Studio 77 report where Tazziii and I recap the latest Mad announcements and event news in a live recording on Twitch. And then we have an edited version that goes up on our YouTube channel. So if you like bloopers, come watch it live. If you don't, then watch it on YouTube. I guess that's the choice. We have Casual Conversations with Comic Creators, which is a monthly series where I talk to a different comic creator about the craft of making comics. So it's all about uncovering the human being behind the art form. Usually on the first Tuesday of each month. For November, it's going to be on the 19th, so Tuesday 19th of November, and I'll be speaking to Nathan Hawthorne from 7:30 p.m. GMT, and then it will be available on Twitch VOD for 14 days after that. And then at some point, we'll work on getting those highlights, different highlights, and put them up on our YouTube. And then we have our games night. So towards the end of each month, we play games with our community. And yeah, you can watch along. They're usually amusing. I don't think anyone hasn't not been amusing for different reasons. We did our D&D, our first D&D campaign on the October games night. So that was cool. So you can check us out live, and again, we'll work on putting those highlights up on the My Matter YouTube. And if you're a young aspiring creative professional or you know one, then check out our Showrunners Work Experience program. That's where we make opportunities available for young people aged 16 and up to work with the My Matter team across comic production, video games, events, and content creation. So it's a very cool opportunity. We've had a bunch of young people over the past year. We've been doing this, and a lot of them have contributed to the new manga. So there's a long list of credits there of people who have contributed in different ways, whether it's like helping design the cover, logo, narrative, investigating animation, a whole bunch of work that's been done. So that's been a learning experience for us as well as the young people as well. So if you're interested, showrunners@mymatter.com, get in touch and we will let you know more. So that is where we are as we stare down the end of another calendar year. Let's talk about some of the stories that we've been enjoying this week.
This is our spoiler-free discussion where we talk about what stories everyone has been reading, watching, or playing, and we'll start with our guests. So we'll start with Jack. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I've been, working on a Halloween-themed video for Final Fantasy for my channel. So I've been looking at 7 of the Final Fantasy games, and we create like a list feature for 7 horror moments in the Final Fantasy series. It's not a particularly horror-themed series at all, but we thought we'd, dig into some of the things that are a bit spookier or scarier or terrifying. So we're particularly looking at Final Fantasy X and some of the stuff that happens in that between the sort of, I guess you could call them the warring tribes in that game. But without getting into spoilers, I won't mention things that happen, but that's quite an interesting thing. It's an interesting, was it Isekai story? I could never pronounce that. But basically, the main character, Tidus, is thrown into a different world and has to discover it as he goes through and realizes all these factions are fighting against each other. That's quite a few horror-themed moments in that one. And also another Final Fantasy game is that I've just started playing for the first time ever is Final Fantasy 13. Which is an interesting story set in I think it's the world of Cocoon. It's technically set between the world of Cocoon and the world of world of Pulse even. The idea is the main characters are on the run from Cocoon and they've been branded as, I think it's, I get confused. It's either they're l'Cie or Falsi. It's a bit of a confusing game, but I'm definitely enjoying it. I actually played it when it first came out in 2009 for about half an hour and got really bored because it didn't meet my expectations. But yeah, no, it's sinking in a bit now, and it's quite an interesting thing. I like being on the run in games. It's quite quite exciting thing. So interesting stuff. All Final Fantasy. So
Just consuming Final Fantasy.
well, yeah, no, I've been doing quite a bit of content on Final Fantasy, and actually my break from that has been sitting and playing Astrobot, which is probably about as far from the story as you can get. So it's been all encompassing with Final Fantasy at the minute. So, but that does me, it suits me because I like Final Fantasy, as you can probably tell.
Nice. Aisha, what about you?
Oh, I've got quite a few things on the go. I think similarly to Jack, Halloween themed. So I've picked up a game which I haven't played in a few months called Little Goody Two Shoes. That's basically the most cutest shoujo anime-looking game you've ever seen, and it's styled in a retro pixel type game, which I thought was an RPG, but it actually isn't. It's kind of like a horror survival / puzzle game. And I remembered why I haven't played it in so many months. The puzzles are so hard, but it's just so much fun because the story, you follow this girl called Elise, and it's one of those points where it's everyone's suspecting each other of being a witch, and all these weird things are happening around her, and she's just like, she's quite oblivious to it all, where it seems quite obvious to you, the player, because you're like, yeah, this is happening, but she's kind of in constant denial because she's too busy trying to get some new shoes. That's her life. And another amazing show which I have to recommend to everyone is called Dan Da Dan. It's an anime that's on Netflix, and they've got it in Japanese subtitle and also English dub, and it's an anime like from I don't even know. It's kind of a mixture of thriller, fantasy, sci-fi, all put in one, and it's definitely a shonen. It's a fighty anime, but there's actually some nice bits of romance in there. I don't want to spoil anything because it's a mad roller coaster ride, and the animation's sick, and the opening tune is by Creepy Nuts, and if you know Creepy Nuts, you know it's going to be a crazy ride. So I really recommend to everyone to check that out. And it's weekly. They release every episode. So I think there's 6 episodes out right now. So watch it. Don't go in with any expectation. Just watch it.
Yeah, I've been recommended Dan. So I will, but I think I'm going to wait until it's all out and then
binge it. I agree. That's how I feel too.
Kay, what about you? What stories have you been reading, watching, or playing?
Oh, I've been enjoying a couple of different ones. Funny you mentioned you did your first D&D session because I just finished The Legend of Vox Machina on Prime, and I binged that one. I waited for all the episodes to come out and then just went wild and watched them all basically in 2 days, and it was incredible. As someone that's watched the whole of campaign 2 and is nearly up to date on campaign 3, it's so nice to go back to campaign 1 and watch the stories without having to see. It's a bit jarring trying to watch campaign 1 of Critical Role because they sort of brought all their episodes over after they'd done some play behind closed doors. So as someone that was quite new to D&D when I first started trying to watch it, I kind of skipped 1 and went straight to 2. So Legend of Vox Machina is really, really great. If you love D&D, you'll get a lot of the references. And if you've been watching Critical Role on their D&D sessions, then it's amazing to see it going to the screen. Game-wise, I've been playing, obviously, Elder Scrolls Online as a Bethesda girl. And I've been doing the main story of their newest chapter, Gold Road. And for anyone confused how I can say I'm a ESO fangirl and then say, well, the most recent chapter came out months ago, I actually don't like to give my community spoilers, so I wait a few months to do it. So I'm midway through that, and that story has continued it's the first time Elder Scrolls Online have done this, where the chapter from last year kind of continues into this year. Previously, you could play every chapter individually, and you still can, but there's a lot of Easter eggs and references if you've played both the previous chapter, Necrom, and this one. And one of the biggest things that happened during this chapter, and it's not a spoiler because it's everywhere and it's part of the advertising, is that they actually brought in a brand new Daedric prince, which for anyone who's a fan of Elder Scrolls lore knows how huge that is. So that was pretty exciting. That's my 2 that I'm really enjoying at the moment. I can't take on too much in one go. It hurts my brain.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard a lot about the Legend of Vox Machina. I think I might dabble into it as well, even though I have no grounding.
No, it's really, really good. And you do not need to know any of the lore of Critical Role or their worlds or anything like that. It's really great for anyone that's intrigued by Critical Role but doesn't have the time to keep up with the hundreds of 4-hour-long episodes, and also people that are interested in D&D. It doesn't really show the D&D side of it, but if you've played D&D, you'll get the little hints and Easter eggs, kind of like the D&D movie, where you could watch it if you didn't play D&D, but if you did, you got the little extra like spicy references. You're like, oh, I got that.
Nice. Yeah, so I'm gonna not list all the, like, I don't know, probably like 5 isekais I've watched since the last episode. Probably more than that. I'm probably just trying to make myself look like I have a life outside of that. And reduce it to 1 isekai and 1 other anime. So I recently binge watched Life with an Ordinary Guy who reincarnated into a total fantasy knockout, and it is hilarious. It's a rom-com about 2 guys that have been transported into another world, but one of them got changed into a gal, and then that's like as far as I can say. It's hilarious on so many different levels, but I just love the interaction between the 2 main protagonists and then like of the rest of the world, and them like dealing with some of their thoughts. It's funny. It's so good. And then another anime that I binge watched was the Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle, which is just this adorable anime about exactly that, a sleepy princess in a demon castle. But she just gets up to lots of mischief trying to achieve her perfect sleep in this demon castle, and is forever escaping her cell. And they're like, wait, you're supposed to be a prisoner.
Can I just say, you're the only other person I've ever known to have watched this show. I'm so pleased. It's so good, isn't it?
It's so good. It's so wholesome. Like,
yeah, in the end, all the demons in the castle are like really like curious. How does she keep escaping? And honestly, she's so devious. It's great.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And I think I just like really related to the sleepiness of this princess.
It's all she wants, and good night's sleep in this dungeon. She doesn't care she's in this dungeon. It's first world problems, ma'am.
Yeah, she's like, I don't care, I've been kidnapped. I just want a good sleep. Yeah, it's hilarious. It's like a really easy watch as well. You can just like pop on an episode here and there. You could probably watch them out of order and it would still just be as much fun.
It almost feels like standalone episodes, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. There is like an overall story, but like it's like just the sort of like standalone situations. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I really want the next season.
Same, fingers crossed, man. Soon.
Yes. Nigel, what about you?
Yeah, so I've actually been playing something. So I have been playing Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Is it the 6th one?
Yeah.
I haven't played since like
A really famous game? No, never heard of it.
No, so I haven't played this game since like Xbox 360, so the numbers mean nothing to me. But yeah, the 6th one, basically I needed something which was just like roller coaster, switch my brain off, let me just like join the ride. And yeah, this was it. So I'm back in after whatever decade or whatever absence. And yeah, I feel like it's a game that just does what it says on the tin. I don't know how people feel about it who have been playing like year on year. I haven't, so it feels refreshing. I don't know if that's how everyone else feels who does play it on a regular basis.
Well, I've had that similar experience with COD games in the past. I dip in and I enjoy the campaign, and then I hear people complain the campaign's not as good as the multiplayer, and I'm like, well, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like you say, a roller coaster ride where you can switch your brain off. It's like an 80s or 90s action movie in a game.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
America good guys, everyone else bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. For the length of this game, I'm on that. So I've been playing that. Been watching Agatha All Along on Disney Plus. Been hearing positive things about it, which is good because I'm always worried when just I feel we're in a stage of like everything Marvel does is bad, or at least if you judge by social media. And then two, did I just go like A and then two? And then the second thing is just whenever, I don't know, anything with like female protagonists or anything different, just automatically there's a section of people that just jump on it. So I was really pleasantly surprised to hear, sort of see like positive reactions. So I thought, okay, cool, let me jump on it. Yeah, and I like it. I think I remember I was a bit thrown off from the first episode just because it's been a long time. I know this connects with WandaVision, which I really enjoyed, but that's kind of faded in my memory a little bit. So I was a bit thrown off at the beginning, but then it feels like a show that just gets better and better each season, and as things are revealed, as characters, not just Agatha, but the characters that she surrounds herself with on this journey, as things unfold, yeah, it just becomes more intriguing and interesting. So I think I'm about, I want to say either episode 4 or 5. So yeah, enjoying the journey so far. So from a previous episode, I was reminded that Bob's Burgers exists because I'd for some reason just forgotten about that and just falling multiple seasons behind. So I thought I'd check in on that. That's a good show. I don't know if anyone else watches that. That's a funny show. That is Bob's Burgers is a solid show, and it's an interesting brand of comedy. It feels like the comedic equivalent of jazz. It's like it's just the beat is not necessarily what you expect. Like the jokes come in at, at just weird intervals from different characters in different ways, and it just like throws you off. But it's got its own flow to it, and I really enjoy it. It feels different. It feels, yeah, it just feels quite its own, very unique, its own unique special thing.
I've always heard about Bob's Burgers because I remember I followed a channel years ago. I can't remember the name of it. It talked about animated masterpieces, and it talked about like one-off episodes that were good. And I know that lots of Bob's Burgers episodes appeared on that. So is it more of a standalone episode type thing, or do you have to follow it from the beginning?
No, you can sort of pop in. Like there is an overarching story, not necessarily overarching story, but the setting. So, family man Bob owns a burger restaurant with his wife. His kids work in the restaurant because kids can work for free, and yeah, it's just their life. But it's just like the kids are all unique, and they speak in different ways. They kind of they react to things differently. They have their own personalities. The wife is cool, is very like quirky, and Bob's like just on the surface just like boring. It's just there's nothing special about him, but he's like the linchpin that allows everyone else to be their own version of wacky, and then he's like holding everything together from like a narrative perspective. But yeah, just the characters will say things that just that fit like the circumstance, but it's just not necessarily the beat. The jokes aren't necessarily on the same beats that you might expect from particularly from like a sort of Western cartoon. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I think it's such a well done series. So now I'm just going to have that on. It's just going to become a background thing. And then my final one, I feel like I've actually got the longest list this week, but my final one is Black Clover, the anime. Just started watching that. I have a friend who was just going through a sort of difficult time, and mentioned that she was watching this because it's what's the word, inspiring in terms of like characters who never give up and things like that. So I thought, okay, I'll sort of watch it, so I'll get into it. And yeah, she was right. It does that. It does that thing that anime does, or certain anime does, of I don't have all the power, but I want this thing, and I'm going to figure out how to get it, and I'm never going to give up, even though everyone around me is telling me to give up on this dream. And yeah, that just doesn't get old, apparently. That just works. So yeah, so it's a show about this or two orphans, and it's this whole thing about magic. So it's a world where everyone can use magic except this one kid who has literally no magic ability, but he wants to become the Wizard King. So that doesn't add up, and everyone tells him that doesn't add up, but he doesn't care. But so quite early, probably yeah, a handful of episodes, but I like the direction, and it's just giving that inspirational vibes that certain types of anime gives.
You're quite lucky. There's quite a few seasons for that. You got a lot to go through.
A lot like One Piece, a lot.
No. Okay,
No,
not
Okay,
that
much.
okay. Okay, all right.
like
See,
it's got a
because
good amount.
okay.
Yeah, it's you can look forward to it. You're not intimidated by it. So
Yeah, that's what I
yeah,
like. That's although I am also watching One Piece as well.
Wow, that's impressive. One Piece is what, 500 episodes, is it, or more?
yeah.
Wow,
They're
more
bringing
than.
out
Let's
new
go.
One
Let's
Piece,
go with
though,
all
aren't they?
more.
Oh, okay, right. Show my
Maybe
age
like
now.
triple that.
Really? I know Dragon Ball's like 700 overall, but I thought that was long. Well, that just goes to show how out of the loop I am with shonen. So.
Yeah, and One Piece isn't even finished yet. It's not.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least I saw the end of Dragon Ball.
If you're interested in One Piece but intimidated by the episodes, I think they're currently working on the One Piece, which
Yeah.
is condensed versions of the episodes, so it follows. It's basically quicker, so you don't go through so many really long episodes, which I'm very interested in because I've always been intrigued by it because so many people go nuts for it. But I just there's too many episodes there. I did my time with Naruto and Bleach.
Did
Okay,
my
I
time.
Agreed.
I thought that, and then I
Yeah.
started watching One Piece, and I was like,
Agreed.
I
I
get
have
it.
to say though, also the One Piece live action is really good. So
Yes.
that's already ready. The first season it's covered so many arcs already. So definitely something to
Recommend
compare
that.
to later, Nigel. You've committed now. You have to keep going with One Piece.
Yeah, I mean we've done an episode on the live action
Yeah.
already, so
Um.
that's great. So that is what we've been enjoying. So with all that said, now let's get to today's main discussion. For today, we're doing a retrospective on Fallout, the TV series. So that is the 2024 post-apocalyptic drama television series based on the role-playing game franchise created by Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky. The series stars Ella Purnell, Aaron Moulton, Kyle MacLachlan, Moises Arias, Zelina Mendes Jones, and Walton Goggins. So, spoiler alert, we are going to get into all the details that we have time for. And so, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's quite good. So, go watch it and then come back to this discussion. Or if you don't care about spoilers, stick around. So, I'll do a super quick overview of the story and then we'll get into it. So, like I said, Fallout is a television series based on the video game franchise, developed by Kilter Films in collaboration with Bethesda Game Studios and Bethesda Softworks. But the show presents a new original story set in the Fallout universe. So it depicts the aftermath of the Great War of 2077, an apocalyptic nuclear exchange between the United States and China set in an alternate history. Earth saw rapid advances in nuclear technology after World War II, leading to a retro-futuristic society and eventual resource war. Many survivors sought refuge in fallout shelters called vaults, unaware that Vault Tech designed each one for sociological and psychological experiments on its inhabitants. Over 200 years later, in 2296, that feels like so far in the future, because it is. A young woman named Lucy leaves her home in Vault 33. She ventures into a dangerously unforgiving wasteland of a devastated Los Angeles in search of her father, who has been kidnapped by raiders. On her journey, Lucy encounters a Brotherhood of Steel squire and a legendary ghoul bounty hunter, each with their own complex pasts and agendas. So yeah, we're going to get into like sort of the production behind it, the narrative and characters. What would be interesting to know from everyone is your relationship with the source material. So have you played the games, and what were your expectations with the series? So maybe start with Kay, because I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this one. So we'll start there. But do you want to let us know like your relationship to the source materials?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Fallout and Elder Scrolls, but Fallout over the past couple of years has had so many fun things going on. I play a lot of Fallout 76. I've played Fallout 3, Fallout 4. I really need to go back and play New Vegas now because of where we ended up in the Fallout series at the end. I feel like I need to go play it, but I've played the games a lot and I've done cosplays and all sorts. I think it was it last week or the week before? Everything's a blur. I just did a really cool sponsored stream with Bethesda where they basically sponsored me to do a look from the game, and I turned myself into a Lost, which is a ghoul that's had a bunch of cool stuff happen to it from Fallout 76. We're not doing Fallout 76 spoilers today. If you want to find that out, go do Skyline Valley. So yeah, I love it. I've worked a lot with Bethesda on Fallout stuff, and I was really, really, really excited when this season got announced, but also really nervous. As a huge fan of the game, I was absolutely terrified that it was going to be terrible, because I think we can all agree gaming media there's no gray area. It's either really bad or really good. And the few before Fallout were not great. So I was a bit like, there wasn't really, the game to media was not working. So yeah, I'm sure we'll go more into what we like about it, but
Yeah.
I was very happy, and I love it. Love Fallout. Fallout. Ah!
Cool. Cool. Jack, what about yourself? Like,
So I'm kind of the opposite. So my history with Fallout is I don't know if it's technically the opposite. I'm not really a big Fallout player, but I did play parts of 4. I'm a bit strange when it comes to games. I'll pick games up and then I'll get like locked onto one thing, and I'll try and like get to the top of because it's an RPG, you get to the top of like a tree of skill you can do. And I ended up spending like about 5 or 6 hours just focused on that. So I've seen the beginning going into the vault part in Fallout 4 a few times. And I also remember, like, back in the day, I was a big DOS PC gamer, and I remember watching, like, a trailer, for want of a better description, it used to be on, I don't know what CD it was on. Remember those things? Of the sort of early Fallout iconography of probably the first game back in the late 90s, and I remember thinking it was really spooky and scary, and one of these things that I probably wouldn't have been allowed to play. So I remember that. But no, so I'm relatively new. I mean, I'm aware of it, and like I say, I know all the iconography and the. If you showed me the characters and the the blue suits and stuff, I'd say, that's Fallout. But no, this is my first experience of actually the actual story and digging into the world, and I thought it was brilliant. So I thought it was fantastic, and I think, like we just said there, the video game adaptation thing. Yeah, this is the first time I think that they've really nailed it. I think that Detective Pikachu is good. But I think that's a different vibe than this. This is a real in the universe that it's I think the only other one that I remember being good was Earthworm Jim, which was a cartoon back in the 90s, which was from a game.
That's a throwback.
So that was well. But like, yeah, I think there's been a few okay ones, but this is the first one where I think it's good on its own merit, not just because of the source material it comes from, kind of thing, from what I gather. So
okay, now I've got the Earthworm Jim soundtrack in my head. Aisha,
sorry.
I know, that's cool. Yeah, Aisha, what did you think, and had you had much experience with the games?
So I'm definitely in the minority of, I had little or no info on what Fallout was. I know it was a game series, and my brother played some of them when I was younger, and I can always remember the one. I can't remember how recent it was. Recent for me could have been last year, could be 5 years ago, but he played one of them and the customization was insane good, and that was a really big hype. So I knew Fallout was like post-apocalyptic, shoot, and I knew Vault Boy because of the fancy gadget on the watch. That's all I knew. So I knew there was going to be a lot of shooting. I knew there was going to be blue suits and a fancy watch. So, and most importantly, Kyle MacLachlan was in it. Of course I was going to watch this show. Oh my days. So I sat there, watched the first episode. I was blown away because I love mystery, that kind of stuff. And I've been brought up on, for example, weird stuff like Twin Peaks and, Dune and stuff like that. So watching it, I was like, wow, there's action going on. There's a female protag. What? Through it all, I've watched it all, and seeing all the different characters, really really good star cast, a few British cameos in there as well, guys. We can always look back to other game to movie transitions, and they haven't all been great. So I think there was a lot of high expectation for Fallout. The fact that Beth said that was involved, and the cast and everything they had, they just did a fantastic job. And I'm glad I knew nothing of it. I went in blind and I was like blown away.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Tazzy, I know you're familiar with the games, right? As in, like, played them.
No,
Or
well,
did I just make that up?
yeah, kinda. So I'm very good. I've started Fallout 4 several times, and I
Alright.
kind of just I do the character creation, I leave the vault, I get about 10 paces, and then I stop playing. But I've played a bit of New Vegas, and I've watched people play. It's one that I really enjoy watching people play, then go, oh, I'm going to really enjoy playing this. And then when I'm actually playing it, I'm like, why do I not enjoy actually playing it? I just enjoy watching. I love it. Basically, I love the aesthetic of Fallout.
Same.
And
Got
yeah,
vibes.
and like a lot of like, yeah, I love the vibe. I love the aesthetic. I love like the like different types of characters and stuff. So I was very much looking forward to the Fallout series because I wanted to like consume that world. And the games, I was just like finding it so hard to play them myself. So I was very excited. And I really, really enjoyed the show.
You know what? So Kay's a default expert, and I feel we've all just like let her down because I also haven't played much of the of the games. Sorry, but I do know like the iconography that like Aisha mentioned. Although I'm not 100% sure I haven't played any of the games because it is definitely my type of game, and it's weird that I haven't. But anyway, I'll deal with that later. But yeah, so I know I know the game, and I've seen in terms of like the visuals and the type of game it is, and saw what to expect to a certain extent, but not super familiar with the exact lore. So this was very much a learning experience for me, and something where I'm coming into it almost blind in a sense, and just like taking the story as presented in this medium. So yeah, I thought it was great. It was great in a I don't know how to explain it, so it might come out as we talk about it. But I felt like The Last of Us was a great show,
Hmm.
and because the original source material had a very strong, clear, and high quality narrative, so it was almost like, guys, don't mess this up, just do the story. But they did it in a way that understood and respected the medium they were telling that story in. And we talked about that on some episode. I'll link it in the show notes somewhere. But because I know Fallout doesn't have a singular narrative because of the nature of the game, it's always interesting to see how they then go about that challenge. And I felt they did such a good job of adapting what is a game where everyone who plays it has a different experience, like even more so than your average game, because it's, you know, like Tazziii said, that character creation. And it just did a great job of wrapping that lore into something presentable and accessible to someone like the majority of this of this podcast, apparently, who weren't super familiar with all of the lore, the story. So very impressed. And it's like just good. You don't need to know anything about the story. It's just a very good, well done show, and that's good to see. So cool. All right. So we all know where we're coming from, and like has been mentioned, we have this idea of the video game curse, which maybe is not as strong as a curse as it used to be, but once upon a time, if you don't know what CDs are, then you probably also don't know that once upon a time, video game stories were just terrible. They were just, and the expectation is just how terrible. Not There's no chance of them being good.
I don't know. Resident Evil's holding that curse strong.
I mean, there are still, yeah. Can any curse truly be lifted? Yeah, but there are more examples of good than not so good, maybe.
I think that Resident Evil's kind of embraced the badness, though, hasn't it? Those
Yeah.
movies are like, they know they're bad, and they
But
kind
we've
of gone
lost the
full
budget
tilt.
now.
Yeah,
Street Fighter kind of, or like, I know the original Mario, so bad it might become good.
Oh no, it's a cult classic, Mario. You can't hate on it. You have to be
Oh no, I
subjected
don't
to
hate
it.
it, but you know, I have eyes and I can see. So um, so I can imagine like with Bethesda, you have this like trepidation. So they were approached multiple times about doing a television adaptation, but the suggestions that were put forward didn't apparently match the vision of Todd Howard, who is the director and executive producer at Bethesda. And even their marketing executive, Pete Hines, cautioned about the impact of a poor adaptation and is quoted as saying there's more things that can go wrong than can go right. So what's interesting is, why do you think they decided to go with this like Bethesda property for a show over something else? Like Elder Scrolls has been mentioned. Like, what do you all think like made them stop and go, like, this is the one and this is the time?
Oh, that's a really hard one. I think Elder Scrolls is in a little bit of a weird place at the moment because we're all waiting for Elder Scrolls 6. Maybe that had part to do with it because the Elder Scrolls team are focused heavily on doing that. Don't worry, it is still coming. I don't know any info about it, but it is coming. I just keep being told, don't worry, it's still happening. So maybe they're keeping their teams busy on that. And Fallout is something as well that I feel like a lot of people can understand, whereas fantasy can sometimes put people off. You know, when they start seeing the pointed ears and the cat people, they're a bit like, oh, okay, it's a bit much for me. I know that sometimes I've been playing a game and my grandparents have looked over my shoulder. They go, oh, what is that? But Fallout, I've managed to get most of my family to watch it. And I'm so excited because I can talk about one of my favorite game franchises and they know what I'm talking about now. So I think it's more accessible to people because it's, you know, it's technology, it's history, it's got that war bit, it's exciting, but it's got the fantasy element, but in a way that doesn't kind of scare the normies.
Normies, yeah. Is that
You know?
American culture as well? Because I mean, you know,
Mhm.
for better or for worse, we are very familiar with American culture on this side of the planet.
Yeah, easy to not absorb, like not suck up. I'm trying to think of the word. Digest. That's the one. That's the word.
I think as well, like there's been loads of like fantasy stuff over the last few years on TV. I mean, obviously Game of Thrones, everyone used to compare everything fantasy to Lord of the Rings. Now they compare it to Game of Thrones, and it almost feels like Bethesda have gone, what's our thing? Obviously that Elder Scrolls is their thing as well, but it is, you know, like dragons and sort of like, you know, typical medieval style fantasy stuff. And it's almost like, well, maybe audiences are probably general audiences are probably a bit bored now, and it makes sense to sort of throw something a little bit more unique, I guess, maybe. Obviously gaming audience
Yeah,
aren't really bored of it, so
Yeah, I was going to say it's a bit different. It's different to other shows and films that are out there. And normally when you go post-apocalyptic, you go zombies or Mad Max.
Yeah.
And this is like a bit different. I feel like, well, yeah, I don't think it's either. Like it's experiments.
Radical.
And it's not space, like it's like the future, and it's not space, and it's not like zombie apocalypse. It's like quite normal still. Like it's like people are living like a normal life.
Yeah.
It's like even the zombies are living it up.
Yeah.
You can
in like
imagine
this wild future. It's like, but all the things that people would like, there's very grounded normal things like this normal everyday life that they're living in the vault, even though it's a bit uncanny valley. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. As you can put yourself in their shoes quite easily, can't you? Because you can sort of go, right, if this happened, if there's a nuclear apocalypse and I was in this vault, it's probably the sort of environment you'd be in. Whereas obviously in a fantasy world, it's like, it really is really far-fetched, and it's sort of like you'd have to sort of suspend disbelief an extra step. I think it's just a bit trickier to do. And if you don't do it well, you don't do it well at all. So
you can lose people.
And you get to explain a really crazy world without having to invent a character to explain it through,
to say, what is
because
this?
you've already got a character that is going to be like that, and it works perfectly. You don't have to like create a new concept of a character. It's like, yeah, you've been living in a vault, so everything's going to be weird, and you can easily answer those questions without it feeling as the audience like you're being over-explained to.
Yeah, it's that dreaded exposition thing. Yeah, it handles that really well. So they sort of made a decision on this, and so this is very new. The adaptation was announced in 2020 under Amazon Studios, and what you kind of like described is like a new story, and I find that intriguing that they chose to tell a new story within the universe, rather than take like a specific game and then try and adapt that. So that's an interesting decision. And yeah, it's been a hit. So according to Amazon, it reached 65 million viewers in its first 16 days that it was available, and it's had become the second most watched title in the history of the platform after Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which I've not watched, but it works. So it seems to not only satisfy those who are into the game, but just everyone who likes watching television series. And we recently did a panel at London Comic Con about video game adaptations and looked at the good and the bad, and the bad specifically Borderlands. Go listen to that episode if you want a good time. Don't watch it if you want a good time, but listen to our episode. When it came time for questions, we had what I thought was a really good question. So I'm gonna basically copy and paste the question here and try and claim it as my own. So the question is, like, what is the onus of games companies to ensure that successful, faithful adaptation of their material? Because it sounded here like Bethesda very involved, and we've talked about, I mean, we mentioned One Piece earlier. It felt like a similar thing where the creator was involved, but sometimes we've seen bad results even if a creator is involved. What do you think is, like, how much responsibility do games companies have to ensure that the thing comes out right?
I think the most important thing is having, as you say, the developers involved, but also having people that are fanboys, girls, they, thems on the boards when they're discussing everything. So I think it was the actual director himself of Fallout that was a massive Fallout nerd, to the point that he made sure that, and this is a fun little fact, all of the props in the show are from game files. So that is why everything
Ah.
looks identical to what it does in the games. And if you didn't know it does, it does. I remember watching the show and going, whoa, that looks exactly like it does in the game. They've even got that kind of crafting station. I was really excited by the props. And when I found that out, I thought that was amazing. So having someone on the boards and in the discussions, in the meeting rooms, that is a that is a huge fan of it, along with the developers. I don't know how someone could go wrong with that. I think if you just go to one of these big Hollywood peoples and you say, here's a game, here's the story of it, make it a movie, and they know nothing about the game, they've not had any idea about the game, it's never going to have a soul, it's never going to appeal to people that do love those titles. And in turn, it's probably not going to appeal to people that haven't played the games either, because, like I say, no soul is there. It just looks soulless. And it's, I mean, Borderlands, I haven't seen it yet, but to me, it just seemed like, cool, people like this game. What big names can we get in to be part of it?
Mm,
Let's make up some story based on what we know. It didn't feel like there was any consultation going on there. It didn't seem
very
like,
disconnected.
yeah, extremely disconnected. So, I mean, not just having developers on board, but having a fan there, or fans, or people that, you know, content creators that play the game, because they see all sides of it. They know the developers, they know the fans, but yeah, I think that's the most important bit, is find people that have the passion there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's interesting as well because sort of it's changing now, but gaming audiences are sort of, I don't know what the phrase would be, they're more separate because like games in general are less in the sort of like public area. Everyone, for example, even if you've never watched Star Wars, you know who Darth Vader is, and that kind of stuff. But in games, it's a lot of the titles have sort of got their own hardcore fan bases. So because of that, a lot of these stories don't resonate with audiences sort of when they're younger, but it is specific sort of niche audiences. So that makes that point much more important, because if you don't do that, then you're not really tapping into the actual story. You're just tapping into a skin of a generic post-apocalyptic thing and putting it anywhere, and it doesn't really, it might as well not be the thing, that's the problem.
That's interesting, that idea. I think there are some games that cross over. I mean, Call of
more so
Duty,
now.
obviously,
Yeah.
But then I get what you mean about maybe there's a bit. Is there a bit of more siloed? I wonder how much of the, yeah. To be fair, I wonder how much of the like Fallout sort of story or lore is in the sort of public consciousness before the game
It's more like it depends on what
before the
console.
show came out. Sorry.
It depends on what console you've grown up with, isn't it? A lot of the time, like I know people that were Xbox people that know loads about Halo. I played a bit of Halo as a kid, but I couldn't tell you the ins and outs of the story. Whereas I mentioned Final Fantasy earlier, I had a PlayStation, so I know everything about all the Final Fantasy stories, even the ones I haven't played. Because I'm involved with the game's media and read the magazines and all that stuff. It's it does feel a bit more siloed, and I think if sort of companies follow this approach they've approached here with Fallout, it will probably sort of break down some of that stuff, which I think is really good because it enables you to get more exposed to stuff that, like, you can watch a 10-episode series as opposed to a 40-hour game that you might not have time to watch, or play, sorry.
And then even go and play the game afterwards. And I feel that's...
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's really good to, the closer they stick to the original media and getting everything right for their main fans, that love pours into the existing fans. Another series that did it really well is Arcane, and I'm so excited for the next series coming up. Loads of people know about League of Legends, but they've never played the game because
and some of them never will.
Clicky, it's a little bit overwhelming for people. I play League, but I know lots of people that don't, and Arcane is something that we've all bonded over because, like Fallout, they really lent into this is for the fans. But because it's for the fans, they portray the media and the story in such a perfect way that everyone can enjoy it because they're really showcasing what they're made of. If you don't stay true to what you're trying to do and you try and cater to people that don't understand, it's gonna, again, I'll say it again, I'll repeat myself, gonna have no soul. That soul is what kept the gamers there and intrigued in the first place. So
Are you sure you haven't seen Borderlands? Because
I haven't, for the reasons that it
feels like you know all about it.
Well, even this is the thing. Even the trailers, as a huge Borderlands fan, even the trailers just felt completely soulless. I was watching it going, how is this Borderlands? We won't go into that because I will rant.
Yeah, no,
it's just a trailer that I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense, like, at all. So, yeah.
I was going to come in from a business perspective. As a community manager of deals with different licenses, the creator, the organization that hold the game IP, is their imperative to protect that IP, and depends on how much power they are given to have that overseeing power. For example, we were talking about the One Piece live action. So Ichiro Oda literally said, you can only do this if I oversee every single step of the show.
Yeah.
So he had a massive input into it. Did he change? Did he do anything? We will never know the 100% of it, but all we know is that the product was so close to the manga, even though they cut a lot of things out, they diluted it, but it was true to everything that we know from the anime and manga, and it was a complete hit. Whereas you can also look at the Mario movie. Nintendo have been offered these many years. They only agreed if they could again have complete control of most decisions. Now, a lot of things wanted to be added in, a lot of gender bending, pseudo relationships and stuff like that wanted to be added in. Nintendo were like, no, you are sticking to the canon, the law, or you're not making this movie. So Fallout, I mean, I would rely mostly on kayPOWXD to say, is it true to the Fallout universe, everything that's happened in the series?
Oh, incredibly. It was perfect. I don't mind saying that. There wasn't a point where I was like, my cheeks hurt at the end of that series.
Nice.
No,
that's
really
good to
good
hear.
because even wins off from the files, that's one really helpful to the company who do the CGI, because they're just basically given the stuff that they have to design it. It's there, it's ready. They just bring it to life, and then obviously all the fans, all the gamers are watching it and going, "Oh my god, I
Another
love
fun
Flavor."
fact.
It must be proper, makes you feel giddy when you see it all. So that's the kind of stuff maybe they decided to say, yeah, right, we want everything that's actually in the game. You're not allowed any creative control. We want everything that's there, and it was perfect. And that way, how good is it going to be to sell merch?
Oh
Yeah.
It was so good. I was giddy the whole way through. But another little fun fact: they used a real jetpack. That's why the power armor looked so realistic. That was a real
Right.
jetpack.
Fantastic.
Yeah, real
Wow.
Incredible.
jetpack.
Wow,
There's a
I want
video
on
on
that,
YouTube of
definitely.
them using it.
That's cool. Well, I'll add to that nothing, if I can, nothing felt like a self parody at any point. And I know I've not seen Borderlands, but I know that like talking about Star Wars, briefly, like I remember my old boss turned around and talked about I think one of the newer Star Wars films, and it felt like they were like ticking off the different things. Like there's like random bits. I think in The Force Awakens where Finn's there and he's picking out random artifacts from the Millennium Falcon, but it didn't feel. It felt a little bit more like a little bit self-parody and referential. Was this stuff, all the stuff in it,
Yep.
it just felt like part of the world, and it wasn't
Felt
at any
natural as
point.
part of the story.
It wasn't taking the mickey out of itself. It was sort of real and lived in.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like that understanding is definitely there, and it's certainly like the responsibility of the creators to ensure that's reflected. And I feel like you do need that respect. I feel this respect to the source material, and I think that's something that came up on the panel at Comic Con that Jed Shepard was saying that sometimes you can feel like they creators try and shy away from it because they're almost like embarrassed by it, but then you serve no one by that. But then at the same time, you have to have respect for the medium that you're working within, and not everything in games can translate to film. And I felt a similar way when watching The Last of Us, as I did with Fallout, where it's like, okay, there's a point where I was like, and pretty early on, I was like, okay, the creators here know that they're working in TV and it's a different medium and they understand what works. So as we go into like the narrative, it's like you have the early part where you have to set the tone, like and the setting. You have to set the setting. So where we are and we're following. And this is a show that is a character drama. Has some like dark humor. I do like the way the humors were portrayed, and a lot of action in there as well. But in that first, maybe even the first 2 episodes, the one thing that came to mind is patience. I saw patience to set the world and the tone and the different factions that we're gonna follow, and then ground it in character. Because in games, you are the character and you're making the actions and you're doing the decisions. But in pretty much everything else, you're watching or you're taking someone else's perspective. So it took time to like ground us. So we see Lucy live her life and so what happens, and as this sort of building like mystery is unfolding. But in that first couple episodes, I don't know if you all felt it. Just it was quite. I say slow, but I don't mean that in a like it's boring and nothing's happening.
Yeah,
It just struck me as this is taking its time to set this world.
totally. The second episode, I think the first scene, and I don't remember the character's name. It's the scientist guy. I think he says one word. I think he says "sit" to the dog, but there's no words for the first 15 minutes of the first episode. And I remember watching it thinking completely captivated by just the cinematography and just watching the characters moving around the world. It was just, this is incredible, and there was no dialogue other than I think the word "sit." So and it was slow, but it didn't feel boring. It was slow and engaging.
As a fan of the games, it felt like the tutorial, because
Right.
in the
Yeah, there you
games
go.
you start in the vault usually, and I think in all of them apart from New Vegas probably, but you start in a vault in Fallout 3, in Fallout 4. Well, in Fallout 4 you don't, but you go to a vault anyway. You start in the vaults, you get shown what it's like in the vaults. Oh, it's all happy, perfect, everything's fine. And then it's not so fine. So for me as a fan of the games, the first episode was the tutorial. I was like, okay, this is the tutorial episode. This is teaching everyone. This is how you play the game. This is how you do things. And I think they did that in a really, really good way. And it transferred to the screen really well. So it gave that feeling of, right, this is the tutorial episode to the
Yeah.
gamers and the people that played it. But those who didn't, it was just building the story. I also think it's really clever how they portrayed the VAT system. So in Fallout, you have the VAT system where you can push a button either on your controller or your keyboard, and it helps you aim, and you decide based on your perception, you can decide what part of the body you're going to attack, and then the whole game slows down and then you shoot it. They didn't show that in the movie because it wouldn't really make sense to see that from a perspective of the not being the player. But the way that they got them shooting the guns and that they were hitting very specific areas and things, you could tell you were like, oh, he's got really high level in perception and agility and all this. For anyone that didn't know, they were like, oh, he's just really good with a gun.
Cool. I like that. So yeah, again, like bringing in the game, but without like, hey, look at this. This is from the game. Hey, you see, remember this? So yeah, just that respect for both mediums. So we get like there's three broad factions here, but we kind of focusing on one, which is the Vault 33, and yeah, it's that patient build up. But then I don't know. There's always like an air of something's not quite right here, and I'm going to stick around to until they show what it is, which they do at the end of the first episode. So then we follow like Lucy out into the vault and into the world, and by that point you have this thing in like this approach in storytelling of like I say, grounding us in the main character. So we've seen Lucy because she was going to be married off, and then and then the whole kind of thing blew up, and then her dad was abducted, and she's like, I'm going to go get my dad back. And I think that humanness in the story, so even if you don't know everything from the games, you kind of get what's just happened, and now we can follow this character as she goes out into the quote unquote real world. And like Tazziii said, because she's always been in this role, like she's learning as we're learning. So it's just that perfect alignment of ignorant character. I don't mean that in a bad way, but character just doesn't know what's on the other side in this world, and ignorant audience as well. Like we don't know, well, maybe apart from Kay, but who knew everything that was coming. But for the rest of us, like, oh, okay, what is this world? Who are these people? So I really like how they do that. And on that subject of new audiences, because that is the reason why they adapt these things, is like find that new audience that would buy into the story, that might go back and play the games, or if there's merch available. So there is always that commercial aspect. How important do you think it is for like the show to be accessible to those who don't know the source material? Like, what is that balance?
I think I'm a big gamer, and I just think that anytime a gaming storytelling comes out into sort of like the more mainstream, and it's done right, is great, because I think like everyone said here, that it's great to share, stuff that you've nerded out with when you're younger with the rest of your family. I remember as a kid showing my dad the Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within and being like, you'll get it now, and that not quite meeting the expectations, being really disappointed that my dad couldn't get it the same way that I did. So I think it's really, really important and really good to have that barrier being broken down in some ways, I think.
No, because you want to, like someone said, normies.
Yeah.
You want to not have to have the audience know every detail of the game, but then the thing that's informing the show is the game. So it's like, how do you approach that? How do you bring that in? And I think, I just think it does such a good job of that. But then, especially for like an open world game, because like I said earlier, it doesn't adapt a single game. So, Kay, you can kind of like correct if I'm wrong, but it's sort of, is it like merging elements of, or different elements of different games together to create something new? Does this story fit in with the stories of the games?
So every Fallout game starts from a new sort of protagonist. So you
Right.
play as the Lone Wanderer, or they all have different nicknames. So each game has a different story. So watching this one and seeing it have a new story wasn't particularly new to the Fallout community, and kind of something we wanted, because I think following one of the games would have been very risky, because people get very passionate about sticking true to the lore a bit more than what you would have done if you just made something new. And I will say that this one, they did it really well, because they have elements from some of the other stories, and because it's in the world, and they did such a good job of building the world and making it look so exact to the games, it just felt like you were playing a new game. It felt like it was a whole new story, and Lucy was the character you'd made, and you were going through and doing your thing. So yeah, although it's a new story, it made so much sense as fans of the game, because that's just how Fallout goes. But
Okay.
yeah, and there was references to older games, as the other games, as I say, like I mentioned at the start, I really want to play through New Vegas, because there's one of the shots of a city at the end is New Vegas, and it looks like it does in the game as well. So that was really, really cool to see that. And I thought, oh no, I've got to play New Vegas. How am I going to do that? Because I'm still playing 76. So yeah, really well done.
Nice. Yeah. So when we get out into the world, and this is the part where, like Tazziii said, there's not a whole bunch of exposition, and which is interesting for a game which does bring a load of new lore. So we see the vault. So we see Lucy and her. I was going to say, I guess, family and community, and everything that's going on there. And then we get out into the wasteland, and we see the ghouls, one in particular. And then we also see the Brotherhood of Steel, and they're all different. They're all very different, and they all clearly got a whole like backstory that we're gonna find out more as we go into the episodes. But what I feel is so great is that they introduce new information through conflict, and that's always just the best way. So character-based, like conflict that comes from different motivations. So they give us the MacGuffin, which is like the scientist's head, or the thing that's in the scientist's head, that everyone is after. So okay, cool. I got that. Everyone's after the head. I might not know exactly like why or how that fits in, but I know everyone wants this, and then everyone wants it for a different reason. And then we've got the conflict, which is primarily through like Lucy, because she's like the main protagonist. But because we get that conflict with different characters, it sort of introduces us to what the other side wants. So and then through flashbacks, which I guess we'll talk about in a bit as well, it just everything unfolds, and it's just done so well. So we have the powerful mega corporation Vault-Tec. We get that. We live in a capitalist society. We know what that's about, and it's an American government kind of situation. So we got that. We got the everything's not quite right Vault that they are responsible for. Then we see the Brotherhood of Steel, which is this militarized faction with some kind of religious leanings in there. And then we see specifically the squire. So they've got the lords, squires, and then aspirants. And then we follow Maximus, who is a aspirant. And then the ghouls, which is the kind of zombie type things, but they're not undead. They live a long time, and apparently shoot really well. So we see the mutant remnants of Cooper Howard, who is the first person to cross paths with Lucy. And they're both such captivating characters for different reasons that when they clash, it's like, oh, like we kind of know what he wants, and we know what she's after, and we're just in. I just feel they do that so well. Was there a particular conflict that resonated with people the most? I really like the conflict between Cooper and Lucy. That was just great for me. That's like the old, like wizened, cynical kind of guy with the wide-eyed, like literally wide-eyed kind of newbie to this world. I always love that kind of conflict.
I quite like the conflict when Lucy and Cooper, like, kind of Cooper's sort of apprehended her, sort of kidnapped her-ish. We're not really sure, because we also know Lucy is following him for her reasons as well. So when they get to that building where he sort of kind of traded her, these unsavory folk, let's put it that way, and she's all like, oh yeah, they're gonna clean me up and look after me, and then you just realize he did her dirty, and it's just like they're almost like a couple the way they fight. I know it's quite brutal fighting,
Yeah.
but you can't help but also like Cooper. He's got his own issues, like the whole ghoul thing. To survive, they have to live off this certain like chemical, and that's what her for. And when she comes back, he's almost like, hey, good to see you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. And I don't know, it's a really strange dynamic. They hate each other, but they don't. And when it comes down to it, they need each other for so much of their journey. And when Maximus comes into it, this bizarre kind of triangle, it's just so enjoyable to see every single encounter.
I love that part as well. Yeah, no, that part with Cooper and Lucy as well. That what I thought was brilliant about that, and I think that was the point where I was definitely hooked with the series, because basically he trades her in for his medicine or his stuff. I don't know what you call it, and she kind of escapes, and then he's pretty much just sold her, and she he's expected her to die, and she comes out, and pretty much, even though he's just been horrible to her, she still has faith in him as a human being. She sees his humanity, and it's the look on his face, the acting, the look on his face is incredible. And what I love about the scene, I think it might be straight after that, it might be beginning of the next episode, I can't remember, but he goes into the building and watches like an old videotape of himself as an actor, and he realizes the point when he stopped being like her. And they're sort of, in a way, they're both very, very similar. Like at the beginning, the nuclear war bit, where like, actually he's the naive character that doesn't fit in with the world, whereas Lucy in the post-apocalyptic world is like that. So they're actually very similar characters in a sense, and I think that was done so well because they kind of empathize with each other, but they're in different stages, which I think goes off the point that was just there. So I thought it was brilliant, that part. Goosebumps moment, especially, I won't say the word she says, but when she comes out and throws down the medicine at him and then just sort of walks off. I just thought that's fantastic.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I really love the big conflicts between the main characters, but one of my favorite little ones was the kind of spiteful interactions between Lucy and Marjoon. Marjoon is the sort of elderly woman who's behind the shop, and she, to me, is kind of like the tutorial of the outside world for Lucy. Lucy goes in there and asks all these questions, and Marjoon's just looking at her like, oh my gosh, you're one of those vault dwellers, and kind of basically spits on her in disgust. And Lucy's confused because she's saying, oh, we've come from the vaults, we're going to save the world and repopulate the world, but you're all here. And I love that Marjoon is sort of her reality check. And although she's not a main character to me, she was so important because she was sort of the raiders and the wastelanders who were outside and have suffered through everything while this vault dweller's come out smelling like roses, and they're going, well, you are going to learn a lot. And it was kind of that hint that Lucy was slowly going to be broken after that, because she was new and didn't understand anything what was going on. And Marjoon, well, she was looking rough, and she was like, you're not going to be the same soon. You should probably
this world will break
your
you
vault and protect yourself. Yeah, and the way that she introduces the healing items as well, and she basically moves the story along at the beginning. I love the interactions and the conflicts between those. Well, actually three, because they all come into contact with Marjoon at the start. So yeah, I love that.
That's such a good thing to bring up, because as well, there's like a bit of foreshadowing that happens there with the and you still have all of your fingers.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
And then it's kind of like that turning point when Lucy loses her finger, and you kind of just like, oh, this is the apex of the breaking point. I was going to say there's two sort of conflicts, two and a half conflicts that I really enjoy. So it's the inner conflict of Maximus and Lucy. They both have these very similar conflicts in the fact that they both have this very strong belief of what they think is right.
Yeah, these ideals.
And then those being challenged by
reality.
Even though they've both been in very different starting realities, but both righteousness. Whereas like one's like a really brutal beginning with Maximus, whereas Lucy's is like, very like sunshine and rainbows. So yeah, just their like inner conflicts that are constantly like highlighted going through. And then Maximus and the other guy that initially beats him up when they're at a base, but then ends up becoming his squire. Like when Maximus reveals the truth, they're like that whole conflict bit, and then the like that like cat and mouse chase kind of situation that happens, because like they really bonded, and you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen when he tells the truth? And then he just like turns on Maximus, and then in the end Maximus saves him when he sort of turns into Gaul. It's just comical, because that character, I can't even remember his name, but he's just so perfect. He's like the like that very stereotypical bully of like, they're a bully because they got bullied and then found someone that could be beneath
to pass
them.
it on to you.
But actually is still just like this spineless worm, whereas Maximus actually has like this, like, knows himself, whereas this other guy is just kind of like this little squirmy, I don't know. It's the only
And
way
they
to
cast
describe
him
him.
so well. He's like a creep as well, doesn't he? He's
Yeah.
got a little porno tash. He's just like, you don't want to mess with this guy. He's shady. And then Maximus looks as noble as he is, kind of, stands up tall. And maybe that's why it winds him up a bit, that this guy is quite impressive. And it's like, nah, I'm just going to beat you down a bit.
Yeah.
But it is that ideal, right? It's like, and like through those conflicts, again, we learn about the world. So like with Maximus, because I think of, maybe of all the three, Maximus initially was the one I was like, I don't quite understand the Brotherhood of Steel. But then through
Mhm.
his interactions with because he started as a squire, he started as a squire
Yes.
to a lord. And then, like as he said, that he has this ideal, this is what a lord is. They're revered, they're worthy of respect. And then he sees the lord he has, and it's like he's falling short, right, way short of that. So he takes his he lets him die, takes his place. He's like, okay, I'm going to be the the lord that you should have been. And then in that we're learning, okay, so or at least I'm learning, like, okay, so there's a hierarchy. These guys are just everyone respects them, and this is how they've got their ritual, how you, I don't know what the phrase is, I don't know, crown a lord or crown a squire kind of thing. So you learn about all that through the character, because through all that I understand, oh, this guy really wants this position, and he finds that the people in the position aren't worthy of the position. Again, capitalist society, we get that, we've seen that before. So yeah, you understand that. And then again, the same for the other two. We're learning. I feel there's never a point in the show where there's like an info dump, and
Yeah, you get
that's
so
really
much
impressive.
info.
Yeah, exactly. And that's impressive. That's very impressive. So yeah, and then related to that, just seeing the way it unpacks the world so that we understand it, is flashbacks. And flashbacks are something that it can be sort of dangerous, because it can in a way upset the flow of the story, but it doesn't seem to here. I don't know if anyone else thought that, but it never seemed to upset the flow. This show has, I don't know how to describe it, the frequency, the speed of I don't know what it is, but it just feels different. Like I can't think of a show, the type of pacing, but then
Yeah.
it works. It works with this show.
They don't interrupt. They interrupt important moments, and I hate it when they do that. So it's almost like we're looking forward to them when they do come. They're relevant to something that's happened, but not. It doesn't almost have to be directly before that flashback. So every time we learn a bit about Cooper's past, you're like, ooh, ooh, and then later on you realize it's connected to something that's gonna happen or
Mm.
has happened, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. This felt like a natural flow. It's not like, and this. Too much info dump. Okay, how's this relevant? I'm going to think about this for 10 minutes. Oh, wait, I missed what just happened now. Oh, God.
I was going to say they happen exactly when they need to. And it's interesting, Aisha, that you say that they don't interrupt, like they don't just interrupt midway through something. So it's like they kind of wait till they've finished telling that section. And you do look forward to them because you're like, oh, I mean, you get to a point where like there's going to be a flashback at some point that's going to explain all of this. It's not in the middle of this like plot point that's happening. They're going to let this bit finish, and then we're going to get the flashback, and you're kind of excited because then you get it, and you're like, "That's the bit that I was like missing."
Yeah, it propels you forward.
But then it's
narratively.
not. Yeah, it's just not in the like right in the middle, because that annoys me sometimes as well when the flashback is like, it's like almost like having an advert that
Yes.
wasn't well placed.
Which they did do adverts as well, which was quite funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and this is similar because I've mentioned The Last of Us before, but in The Last of Us, they added scenes, even I think some flashback scenes as well, that weren't necessarily in the original game, or small parts of the game that were blown up for television. Again, understanding the medium. So here we get more. I think we get some of the flashbacks that weren't necessarily or aren't necessarily in the game, especially because it's a new story. But for Cooper in particular, we see like who he used to be, and like Jack says, who like Lucy is maybe at this moment. So we see him be that that TV star that everyone kind of almost like idolize. He's just top of the game. But then we also see the moment where just everything literally like blows up with the nuclear bombs being dropped, and where he's at that moment and what that means to him. And it's always this, because when I think I can't remember what the very first flashback for him was, but it was such a contrast to his current character. And I love things like that, because once you do that, now like narratively in your head, you're like, I need to know how that became that, and I'm in. You've got me, because now I need to answer this question, and that's a really smart thing to do. So the flashbacks all help in terms of like not dragging down the show narratively, but like giving you the information when you need it, and then propelling you forward to like, okay, cool, now I've got this bit of information, cool, let's go to the next bit. So, and like hey, with the flashbacks that are in this show, are any of those shown in the game? Like what of the original like nuclear disaster is seen in the game, is experienced?
So Fallout 4 starts kind of in a flashback, I guess, because it's before you get to properly play. You start at happily before the bombs, and you get to meet your first Vault-Tec door salesman and do all those things. But yeah,
Okay.
in the games, you don't really have random flashbacks to things that happened as such. But what it did make me think of, and I don't know if it did this for anyone else who plays the Fallout games, but for me, it made me think of the memory machines that you can find in vaults. One that a lot of people will know is the memory lane in in Fallout 4. There's a whole room that you can go. Actually, it's probably the better one. There's a whole place you can go into these little pods, and you go back into flashbacks and go down different memories, and it can show you parts that your brain has locked off and things. So although they didn't show you going into these pods and having these memories and history is a really big thing in Fallout. And memory lane was a whole vault that was, well, that's really interesting actually. If you look up memory lane, I'll let you discover the story yourself. But history and flashbacks is a huge part of Fallout, but in a way that, not in the very obvious way that they showed it in the show. So I'm glad that they did that, because it's kind of like a little throw to the games without it being too samey. And it was really nice. It was a really nice way to show the lore of Fallout and the lore of these characters without overloading you. Like you say, there was not a point where you were overloaded with information. It was, okay, these people need a bit more information. Let's give a flashback and show that information instead of just having someone blurt it out. You could imagine if the Ghoul had gone on a long story of a rant of how he started out as a movie star, everyone would have shut off. Like, we don't want to hear your backstory, but we want to see your backstory.
I think it helped that the first scene of the series was from his perspective, wasn't it? I think from my memory anyway, unless I'm remembering it wrong. Like you start off the series by seeing him at like a pool party or something, or a barbecue, and then the nuclear war happens,
like an industry party. Oh no, the birthday party.
No, it was the birthday party.
The kid's birthday party.
And then
you see,
you see, there's the thumb thing. We're putting the thumb up to the nuclear thing, and then of course it happens, and of course he won't go in the vault. And the last shot you see before it goes to sort of modern day. I say modern day, I mean like modern day in the series, the 2200s or whatever, is him riding towards these nukes with his daughter. So you instantly think this guy's a hero. And then the next time you see him, he's this 200 years older zombie man type thing, and you kind of, I think the first question I ask is, well, I want to root for this guy, and he's horrible, but I root for him. And it's kind of like the way the flashbacks work is they unpick that bit, because I want to know why I'm rooting for this guy, and I don't want him to be bad, it kind of thing. And I think it really works.
Like him at the start.
Oh really?
Not at the beginning. At the beginning, I honestly didn't fully connect with him being the Ghoul at first, and I love that they made it that way. Some people didn't connect until they made it really obvious. I think because the makeup was so good, and they did such a great job on that, which most of it was real makeup. The only thing that was CGI was the nose, which was green screened. But everything else was makeup, which is and another reason why it looks so realistic. Anyway, tangent. Yeah, so the opening thing, I was like, oh, this poor guy, but you know, I've seen it many times in Fallout. But when we got introduced to him as the Ghoul, I was like, this guy's really horrible, and I do not like him at all. But as I got to see the flashbacks, I started realizing why he was that way, and I started to really like him, and then I started rooting for him. And I think it's because, for me, I thought he was being portrayed as this is the bad guy at the beginning, and I didn't know where it was going to go because he acted like so many bad guys in other games and in Fallout. So I was like, okay, this is the bad guy. I don't like him. But then the flashbacks made me realize, okay, actually, he's traumatized. Fair enough.
I'm a sucker for a broken man.
Yeah, that as well. You learn fix him.
And I feel like as the ghoul, you just feel the broken man. So he plays it so well. And maybe there was like a little bit more of a soft spot because he has a mixed race kid. And I'm like relating hard. There's like the little mixed race girl, like with the beautiful curly hair. I need to know what happened to her. Personal investment. But yeah, I'm definitely a sucker for a broken man, and he was just so broken, and I was like, I'm rooting for him. I need to know the point of like breaking and what drove you to Gouldom, and as like the story progresses, we like get more and more, and the more invested I am like in that story, and then just all the connections. I love it when things are like so interlinked, and as everything like we find more and more how everyone's linked together. I'm just like, this is
it's so
beautiful.
Good.
I love that kind of story.
I thought really well done.
It was cool to see a Western because it's pretty much just like the whole setting of it is a Western. Obviously, he's a cowboy, isn't he? And he effectively, in a way, he kind of lives out his real life, his persona on screen in the real world, and becomes a cowboy and becomes like the Clint Eastwood type man with no name. But I think it's really good that there's like a sort of Western setting, and we've got a female protagonist, because obviously like all the old cowboy films are typical. John Wayne and Clint Eastwood type movies, and they're sort of, in some way chauvinistic, but this is a Western that has that theme and the Wasteland thing, and it's got a really diverse cast, and it stars a woman, which I think is really cool and refreshing. So
don't forget the fancy watch, guys.
The fancy watch is cool. Yeah, I want one.
Good boy. I have one.
You have one? Oh my god.
Yeah. Everybody, let's rob.
It's Law of the Wastelands out here.
But yeah, I know
Exactly.
this podcast is the Wastelands. So I mean, we've touched on a lot of characters already. Like I said, this is a like character driven, and I don't know if there were any in particular that like resonated with people. I quite liked the Ghoul Cooper from the beginning. I don't know why. Just I'm actually not sure why. Maybe there's a deep psychological thing there. I'll investigate later. But I just resonated with him initially. But then, who I was really intrigued by, going back to the Vault, and specifically Vault 33, is Lucy's brother.
Yes, that's who I was going to say.
Yeah, because I couldn't quite, like, from the very beginning, he seemed out of sync with everyone else. And then obviously started asking questions and just started like digging, and then found what, I don't know, something deep within him was asking. So it's like he broke the veil of this vault, and for the audience uncovered like the mystery and the dark sort of mystery in all this. But just watching him, he seemed like I don't know, you get like that, everyone's brainwashed, and then someone kind of snaps out of it a little bit and starts asking
Yeah.
questions, and then looks around and says, wait a minute. Like, he was that character. That was really intriguing.
It's interesting. Literally, they paint him almost like he's the peculiar one at the start, and then it builds a little bit, and then you realize, he's not the weird one. Everyone else is acting strange, and it turns into almost like a conspiracy thing. And then he makes thinking, "Do you know what, sis? You got your calling, I got mine." And I'm actually shocked that he kind of went with his gut instinct, because he's like literally he doesn't fight very well. He's like kind of the runt of the litter. He only has one friend. His real cousin, was it? That guy? Yeah, who's his mate, and who they separate from him. And then you start to think, oh god, this guy, if he goes any deeper, he's like kind
They'll
of done
take him
for.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel it. You're like, oh, Norman, don't do it.
Yeah. What I love about Norm is that he's like the odd, like, because he is like exactly that. Is the fact that he's the odd one out. But I feel like for me, what I started to realize as we like progress, I think there's like one point where it's like, Norm, you've done all these things and you're just not happy with any of these roles. And I was like, I get it. I get him so much at that point. I feel like kind of relatable of like, it's not that he doesn't have any redeeming qualities, not that he's not good at things. It's that none of these are his calling. None of these fit him. He doesn't fit in here. Like, he's not one of you. And that's like why he kind of didn't fit in, because he's not meant to, because he's beyond that, he's more than that. And because he gets like loads of warnings from Betty. And by the way, I just want to say, like, it's really hard to pick out like characters, because as I'm thinking of it, there's just like, I don't think there's a bad character in this. They're all
everyone
so
fits.
well. Yeah, like it's like just every character is so well created.
The acting as well. The acting
Very
performances in
well.
this.
Can I just need to give a shout out to Maximus and his facial expressions.
Yeah.
I had to go and look up just to see that the actor Aaron Moulton does smile. His face, it looks like someone bought him an ice cream and then spat in it, and he's just so disappointed with everything around. And I just believed him so much that he's just so disenfranchised with this whole thing.
This scene on the helicopter where he's been intimidated by the knight, and when he's like sort of crying and he's trying to get over his anxiety, that was like incredible. I was like, wow, this guy's pretty good. But you're right, yeah, all the way through he sort of doesn't smile. I think he smiles once, maybe.
Even when he like gets together with Lucy, just like cheer up. I know it's like, nuclear, but yeah, I get that, but cheer up.
When he turns it down.
The other, I guess, set of characters, just again so impressive. Like there's not a beat missed with characters in this, because they're so funny. Like all like Woody and Reg, hilarious. But then when we go to the vault, that they're like the one where like there's a lot of mutated people.
And they look at them weird.
Like how well, like just the acting. Oh my god, because you knew there was something off.
Yeah.
Like the moment you meet them, like, and there's nothing visually wrong like from the start, but you can feel how off it is, and just like that whole like, and the way it just like escalates into this culty thing. And I think there's one bit where they're like sitting and eating. It's like, no, everything's fine. And then it just slowly starts to notice.
Just everything is not fine.
Everything is not fine. But like the way like everyone in that vault just was so...
Yeah. No, that's when Maximus smiles. Because
because he's really happy. And it's such a creepy smile, because he's got like popcorn, right, or something. Like
because he's never had popcorn before. So.
And he's just like got this smile on his face while he's watching it's like a waterfall on TV. Oh my god, brilliant, so good.
That made me laugh as well. It's surreal humor, because there's that weird cult scene where they're all taking their clothes off and sort of weird stuff's going on, and it's really creepy. But then like obviously as it transpires a bit later, like they're just nice. Well, they're sort of the good people, and they're not they're no threat to the main characters. And then it's like they're really offended, like, oh no, I can't believe you've done this. And it's like, well, you just done some really creepy stuff yourself. It's just a really surreal thing of like, oh, I can't believe you've offended us such a. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, you've just been stripping and doing some weird stuff with God knows what. I just not even gonna describe it. It's just bizarre.
Normal comedy stuff, really.
Yeah. And then Maximus, like, just totally... Oh, now you're just making me think of how good a character Maximus is. Because he's like... He's so righteous. He's so overly righteous that he doesn't take a moment to, like, observe. And he's like, nah, this is... They're gonna kill Lucy. He's like, it's going down. And he just flips out. And then he's like, oh, sorry. you might want to check on him.
Oh, he's like... quite so efficient, because he does a lot, but in terms of like facially, again I mentioned that, but he doesn't do a lot, but he does so much with so little, like intentionally. and
Oh yeah, without talking, you know exactly how he's
was
feeling.
feeling, yeah.
He's not any words though, isn't he? He is a bit more the
Mm,
broody type.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, for
Can
sure.
we shout out to like best character though? The dog.
Oh,
Doggy. I was so happy when they said it. So every dog, the companion in the Fallout games, is called
Mm,
Doggy. So when at first it
oh,
was just the name of the experiment dog, I was like, "Oh, it's a doggy. That's cute." And then
ah,
it was the ghoul that actually said it and called him dog meat at first, and I literally screamed. And my partner was like, "Oh,
oh.
what is going on?" But I was like, "He said dog meat. He called it dog meat." And I think that was the point where I started to like the ghoul. Because number one, he said dog meat, but also that started to show him returning a bit to his humanity a little bit and going a bit
okay.
more caring, where he named the dog instead of just being nasty to it. He's like, "Come on, dog meat." And then obviously later on we find out that he had a dog and he loved dogs. So
Mm.
yeah, it was so nice seeing that sort of the heart coming back to him because of it, honestly, because of his experiences with Lucy. And I think Lucy is one of my favorite characters. I know that's really lame because she's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the main
The main
character.
character.
But I really love that, number one, she's a woman protagonist in my favorite game series, and that upset a lot of people, but
No doubt.
put that in a juice box
Yeah.
and suck it because it happened.
Yeah.
But I was so happy that that happened because it was so nice to feel a little bit of representation in my favorite series, and
Yeah.
the way that, and it also was a perfect choice because I feel like as a woman, she experienced a lot of different things that maybe a man in the Wasteland might not have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, dealing with people
Ah,
like looking at her in certain ways, and
Pushback.
how
Yeah.
to, how to protect herself, and all of those
Looking
questions.
vulnerable and people taking advantage, of
Yeah,
course.
Mm.
yeah, and they did it in such a perfect way of showing her being completely naive and just unaware of her surroundings and innocent, and then slowly teaching her the harshness of the world. And honestly, it kind of felt like, yeah, I know how that is, because when you're a kid, everything, you're protected, you're sheltered, and then you go through teenage years and you start realizing, okay, the world isn't actually that nice sometimes.
yeah.
So
Everything's
watching
not here for
Lucy,
me.
yeah, watching Lucy go through that and the way it was portrayed was so well done, and I really related to it. Maybe not as harshly as she went through, but I mean, we've all gone through our times.
You
So,
have all your
and
fingers.
and yeah, and another representation that I really liked was Steph Harper, the pregnant vault dweller at the beginning. So
Okay.
it was really interesting to show a pregnant vault dweller and how that kind of nets into the vault life, and how the hormones can take over in the protectiveness, and kind of when the raiders came in and how she dealt with that. But she's also a really interesting character because at first you're like, oh, she's the nice best friend, this is all great.
Mm.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, and then something slightly kind of a bit like, okay, she's way too good at this, she's way too cheery, there's something going on, but maybe I'm just being silly because not everything in the vaults is bad, the people aren't bad. And then obviously there is the twist that she is a bit more involved in things, and we didn't really find out more about that, which is, I'm really excited to find out more about Steph, because I feel like I want to know her flashbacks now, because there
Mm.
is some history there, a lot more history than just, she's not just a nice dweller who was pregnant in the vault. What's going on there,
'Cause she was
So
one of the frozen ones because she came from
yeah.
the
Mm.
and as well like one because you were saying like Lucy, one thing about her or two things about her: a, like she's not weak, like
No.
she's
Very
vulnerable but
kick-ass.
she's not weak, she's kick-ass from the get-go, like she is strong. Like
Yeah.
her dad was the
The leader.
overseer, and so and then later on we find out like that who her mum was, and so you can see that it's like, oh yeah, of course she'd be kind of badass because that's in her
Mm.
genes kind of thing. But also, oh my god, just her language.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, okie dokie, and like just her like the pure, that like, I don't know, is it like a 50s housewife type language? Like she doesn't really swear.
Yeah.
But she
Stepford wife,
says like all
yeah.
yeah.
And the whole bit where she's supposed to meet, her future husband, and literally got to breed now. We got to make babies.
Yeah.
It's it's a priority, and I'm just like, it's interesting, like however they've been brought up, this is what we do, this is our priority, like chop chop, and nothing to be embarrassed about. Like emotions don't really come into it. Almost, it's very almost robotic.
I think it's not emotionless though, because they do cousin stuff. Remember,
I was gonna say cousin
and
stuff.
so
That was weird. Oh my god!
It's
But it
a
was
fun
more him.
activity.
It was more the guy than her. Come on.
No, no, it's definitely her. She's like, there's one scene with her and Maximus, and she's like, I'm bored. Like when they're waiting, it's like, do you want to have sex? Like, just like it's not a thing. It's like, this is an activity you do when you're bored. It's also a reproductive. It's also very
exactly. It's not anything emotional. It's hey man, let's do something. Kill some time.
Yeah. I also like that Lucy's an engineer, which I think is really, really cool. I mean, obviously, I'm a dude, so I'm not a woman, but I am an engineer. It's my day job, and obviously there is a massive drive to get more women in engineering. But I think it's great how they didn't make a big deal. That wasn't her story arc. Was that she had to overcome and become an engineer? She was like, presumably, I don't know the games as well as UK, but she's got a higher stat in engineering or whatever the sort of thread is. But it's cool how there's loads of random bits throughout, and it's not overstayed. Like the bit where she gets stabbed in the first episode and she just like patches herself up. That's like but she does it engineering wise. She's not like yelping in pain. It's just like part of the job. And there's a bit where she gets to the armor later and she's really fascinated, but she's been a big complete mechanic nerd, and that's like, I related to that on an engineering level. But it's also fantastic to see a female character that's like that, because normally it's not such, it's always the sort of bloke that has that, and it's really cool to see, I thought, anyway. So
no, just like the characters in this are just I feel everyone is well placed, and that whole thing of just people being upset at female protagonists. I
don't get it.
Get over that. It's a good story, and then don't let some fabricated thing take you out of a good story. And so the way they just is, again, I go back to my earlier thing about they understand the medium, they understand like what the characters are there for. They're not just cool characters for the sake of being cool. They all serve a purpose to like further the narrative, and it's just it's really well done. So then with it's a short series. It's got 8 episodes. I don't know if there's any particular episode that stands out, but we're interested to get to like themes and like takeaways, final thoughts as well. But I wonder because I felt like every episode. So I watched this weirdly. I watched this like with quite not huge gaps in between, but for some reason I just like I'd watch it and then I'd like almost digest, and then I'd come back like a few days later and watch another one, and every episode felt different and moved the story forward in a different way. And I quite like that, again, the sort of variety in episodes and the pacing and the frequency of the episodes, like not the frequency as in like speed, but the wavelength this show is on is kind of different, but I like that. Were there any episodes that stood out to people, just made you?
Not a particular episode, but I'm going to say a theme that stood out to me on I think episode 7 or 8, and that was the snake oil guy. He appeared through so many episodes, and you're like, what is up with this dude trying to sell his nonsense medicine? And he keeps irritating people, and everyone passes him by and is like, hey, fake doctor, and comes to that's when the whole legs broken Maximus, and he's like, oh man, I could do some medicine. He knows no better, and he goes to this guy and he drinks the disgusting concoction that guy gives him, and then it turns him into the ghoul. And then there's this whole thing with the snake doctor and how he got to where he was and stuff, and I was like, oh god, there was an actual setup for this guy. And it came to like a full circle of everybody got their just desserts, and karma came for Thaddeus as well, because I almost thought he's gonna get away, he's gonna shop poor Maximus in, but nah.
Why is he so stupid though?
No, it's Thaddeus though, isn't it? He's not lived in the real world. This was his first time being a steward, right?
I know,
Whereas
but he's just extra. Like, he's zero wits. Like, because Lucy's not been in the real world and would not fall for that. Like, he's an extra. He's got like an extra level of like complete lack of awareness of anything.
Yeah, you didn't watch Grange Hill as a kid. Don't just say no.
I quite liked I can't even remember what episode this was, but there was a moment where Lucy and Maximus were crossing a bridge, and then they saw like two
Oh
other
yeah,
um
they put their hands up.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
that was
know
high tension, that one.
I love those moments in these type of shows when it's like done well, where because if this did happen, like we all have the privilege of, I can, relatively speaking, I know it's not always the same for everyone, but generally, like at least during the day, you can walk and meet a stranger, and there's no immediate threat all the time, or you can go places and you don't think, oh, this person might immediately like kill me and take all my stuff. But that moment, it's like it strips away all that and goes, I don't know if we can trust another human being.
I was holding my breath the whole time.
Yeah, that's such an interesting place to be. Like, can you trust this stranger that they won't kill you and take all your stuff? And in this world, you can't necessarily. And actually, vice versa. To be fair, as should acknowledge what actually happened in that scene. But yeah, those moments are just really cool.
I think the theme for me was like hope. That like, don't lose hope. The hope might change what hope looks like, but don't lose hope. And I feel like quite personally connected to like that and like Lucy's journey, because I feel like previously in my life I was very much Lucy, and the past couple of years I'm more Cooper. I'm like falling.
Shoot first, ask questions later.
Falling way more like Cooper, like a bit less hopeful, and I was like, yeah, I really connected with that like message of like just hope, but it might not always look how you expect it, like, because obviously at the end it's like,
yeah,
everything's different, but they're like, Lucy's still got a hope. It just looks different now.
and what I really like about her character is that she starts off just, what's that phrase? Is it bright-eyed, bushy-tailed?
Yeah.
I don't know why that phrase is popped into my head, but she starts off with that, and she's told essentially this world will break you. And then there's those moments where it kind of like, those would be the moments where she's completely broken, but she doesn't break. And to the point about her being strong, she changes. And kind of like in a similar way to you, Tazziii, like she sort of takes on some aspects of some of the other characters in the real world and all that, but she doesn't break, and she becomes stronger like by the end, and it is that hope. But and when I say she doesn't break, even in her like relationship with Maximus, it's like that hope of just like this almost normal-ish kind of like relationship developing, at least relative in this world. And it's that hope that even in everything is fallen, nuclear bombs dropping or have dropped, but something can still come out of it. And that's a really cool theme in there. Another one is just like capitalism is the enemy. I feel that's we just at that stage of human society where just this is the reoccurring theme in everything. But when we see those flashbacks, and what's cool about the flashbacks is they give us insight into Cooper, and by extension the Vault Tech and everything behind like the wider conspiracy. Okay, so we get to that point where like through his wife and her role and Vault Tech and that cabal of corporations, and it essentially gets to the point of like put a note down like peace is bad for business, so we need these bombs to drop so we can carve out our piece of the pie with these vaults, and everyone gets their chance to own something. And that's like, whoa, that's I mean, this again, what I like about the show, this show says something. This story says something. It has a commentary on, yes, this is a future world, but it has a commentary on where we are today, and that's quite a big statement. Seeing that scene,
I think it proves that character matters, doesn't it? Because obviously the idea of the capitalist sort of approach is that it's this hierarchy of, these people that can afford to go in the vaults are going to be higher up the chain, and the people that can't afford to are going to
there's a
stay
class thing
outside, and
going
that's
on.
a class thing going on. But what's interesting, that I think it's Cooper's wise, and she says just nuke everyone and there'll be less people, and that solves the problem, because then everyone can compete in their own society, which sets up the different vaults. But it's kind of this evil, I guess, psychopathic way of looking at it, that basically you're keeping your place on the ladder by knocking everyone else down below you, as opposed to moving up the ladder and bringing everyone else up with you. And that's Cooper and Lucy's character, and to a different extent Maximus, probably more towards the end, of there being that character, that ideal of let's bring everyone up with us, sort of, the point is that attitude, that hopeful attitude, that, as Tazziii says, is what gets people through, and it can't be understated. It's nice. It's a really good feeling at the end. And actually this is what I felt from watching the show. My attitude of being happy and not giving up is actually, it makes things happen. So it's a really hopeful message in a way. So in a bleak world.
Yeah, there's some hope. There's some hope in there. So
yeah, she's a bit like Dory, isn't she, Lucy? A bit like Dory from Finding Nemo, Lucy.
Oh yeah,
got the same colours as well.
Yeah, that's a comparison I wasn't expecting, but okay, I can see that. I can see
Dory
that.
pulls out a gun.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a film I'd watch.
So then, with this story and where we are with video game adaptations, what do we take away from this? What should, if anyone's listening who's about to option another video game story, what should they take away from this success? I think we're saying this is a success. So what should they take away from this? Anyone got any thoughts on that?
I think I said like most of it earlier, and that's just involve the developers of the game, the lore masters especially. Those are the most important people to talk to, and even keep some fans involved. If you can bring a couple of fans or people that are known to create content on the game into some of the meetings, I think that's the most important thing. Getting people involved who already love the story will put so much soul into it when you go forward. And a lot of the big adaptations that have succeeded recently have all had fans who have helped create them. The Fallout one especially. I know that the director was a huge Fallout nerd, so it definitely shows when you know the story and you're talking to people who understand the story, and it's not going to overwhelm people who don't understand the world, as long as you show them the world, but show them in a world that is a really easy to digest version, like with Fallout. Look at it as a tutorial in a different way. And honestly, I think Fallout could be the new example of how to do it well, because going as far as to make sure, I think it was all the props are actual pieces, like made from actual game files, 3D printed and all things. I remember seeing plushies in the series and going, that's actually the same plushie in the game, because it's so common, and you find them in funny places, like in toilets, and they're sitting on the toilet. It's like a bear on the toilet with a plushie next to it and things like that. And they were dotted around in the show, and just little bits like that mean a lot to fans. And if you make the fans happy, they will go and review like crazy. If you don't make them happy, oh boy.
Yeah.
It helps bringing like a very strong cast into the show, and sometimes it's not about you've cast, but I think the team who brought the live action kind of to life, like you said, Nigel, kind of converted that story to screen to work out, so you're not playing a tutorial where someone's constantly telling you what's going on. You're just learning it as you go along with the characters. It's not obvious, shoved in your face. A lot of it we're figuring out at the same time as these, so kind of we're picking up the clues around the world, wherever the flashbacks and the story has been kind of sewn in together with every different aspect. And of course, we have to love all the like Easter eggs from bits and pieces that everyone gets excited about. Obviously, a bunch of us who haven't played every game will know all of that, but we can appreciate little things like the humor, the settings, and I believe in one of the games, it's really known for creating the backgrounds and the worlds and stuff like that. And it's kind of immersing ourselves into that desert, being part of that Western, feeling for the robot who's actually trying to knife everyone, and you're just like, yeah,
Snip,
he
snip.
wasn't always like that either, you know. It's kind of, we relate, and I think that was something we've been mentioning from the start of this podcast, was the characters are all so relatable and only in every different way. But that's why we found out how to pick a favorite character, because they're all very believe they're all very human. We can relate, like when we are in a bad place, we can relate to the depression of Maximus, the lack of expression. Nigel, I'm sure you relate a lot to Maximus, right?
Yeah, maybe too much in some ways, but that's a different podcast. But yeah, and even just seeing, I think my like takeaway is that respect for the material, obviously the audience, like both audiences, as Kay was saying, and then just, I mean, it's obvious, just get good people who know who know story,
Mm.
because this is such a well told, well structured story. And it, even just thinking about it, is about, you see these characters and they're all on a journey, and this is a show about the journey, because the destination, you really just, you get there like right at the very end, and then all the revelations about Lucy's father and everything, the fallout the fallout of that, didn't even, no pun intended. But the journey, and you see these characters, and it does such a good job of attaching you to these characters and then taking you on this journey of them. Whereas maybe a poorly done, people would fall off and get bored, because they don't necessarily get to where they need to get to until the very end. But it just never feels like that in this. So just do what Fallout does. There you go. There's my advice for.
Yeah, it tells that don't be. I think what I'd say, don't be afraid to tell a story like a game. Now that sounds really silly, but I think on the face of it, but actually, like there's a few like little storytelling things that are very game in this. So, for example, the bit at the end where Cooper comes in, and right at the end, and sort of, I think I read a comment that someone said that it feels like he's been roaming the wasteland for 200 years, and he's finally got back to the main quest. And he's been leveling up for all these years. So yeah, it does feel like that. They told the story through like a character that has been walking around leveling up and stuff like that. And there's also lots of little things like I don't know, the way it's shot, a few sort of fixed background bits. Like there's a bit where they go into I think it's supposed to be a hospital, but it ends up being like the trap to take them into the vault. And there's a shot that pans across, and it looks like an old fixed ground sort of PS2 game. I think that using that sort of cinematography to make it feel like it is a game in a way without being cheesy is really good.
Yeah, that scene as well. They also like the lighting, the way the lighting flickered was like it was like directions in a game, and there was a lot of like questy things that were like,
Yeah.
oh, quest activated type thing, like in your head if you're a gamer, even if you've not played the Fallout games, you can like that,
you get
feel that
language.
moment of like, yeah, like a quest has just been activated.
The moment where the monster comes out of I don't know the name of the monster, that comes out of the lake and eats the head, and it feels like, oh, I'm being sidetracked now onto the next quest. I'm thinking, wow, this is like I'm watching a game, and I think that's the first time I've ever experienced that. So I think do that, whatever that is, whatever that lightning in the bottle is that they found here, do that for everything else, and I think we'll see a lot more good stuff.
Easy.
Yeah, easy. Yeah, he's really easy, and then get a fantastic cast of brilliant actors that are absolutely to die for. So,
yeah,
that's cool.
I think casting your actors right, but it doesn't have to be big names. They just have to suit the character.
The roles, yeah.
Just find the right people for the roles. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should all go to Hollywood. I think we can do this. I think we can do this thing.
Yeah, just let us make the movies.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fine.
Give us $100 million. Cool. Well, I know there's like so much we could still go through, but I feel like we've given Hollywood the advice that it needs. So yeah. So that's been our discussion on the Fallout series. I think it's safe to say this is one of the good ones. So if you haven't seen it, Sorry, we just spoiled it all for you, but there's still a lot in there that's worth checking out. So yeah, look forward to seeing sort of what comes of this and what people learn from the success of this story. If you've seen it, let us know what you think. If we've missed something or that we have, let us know what stood out to you. But yeah, that's it for our deep dive. Before we wrap up for this episode, Tazziii, let's check in with our guests.
Yes, I'd love to hear what projects or any upcoming things that you all want to highlight coming up. But we'll start with Aisha.
So I am currently streaming 3 times a week. I'm embarking on many different JRPGs. Tomorrow I will be starting with the new Romancing Saga 2 from Square Enix. So come in, grab yourself a pew, relax, watch some NPCs staring into the sky. Apart from that, been updating loads of different videos from all my different adventures on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I'm on Twitter. My handle is Hades_Kitty, and through that, all my link tree, all my links are there because they're all different because my name was taken everywhere else. Hard life.
Awesome. We will put some links in the show notes. So then we'll also hear from Jack. Have you got any projects or anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, so I've recently started the last 6 months a channel with my friend, which is a podcast and YouTube channel, which is called EXP Required, which is basically Final Fantasy and other things. So we're hoping to get guests on that are Final Fantasy fans or everyone around the series in some way over the course of however to talk on the podcast. And also we make sort of list features and dive into things videos on YouTube as well, which is EXP Required, and I'm going to be digging into that a lot more because we've got a few hundred subscribers in the last few months, so it's been nice to get some success, but we're hoping to grow and talk more about our favorite games and probably extend into other RPGs as well. So, and that's on Twitter as well, EXP_Required.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then finally, Kay, what projects or news do you want to share with us?
Oh, well, I'm always up to something, aren't I? I'm always streaming. You can find me 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday on Twitch and TikTok, both at the same time. It was YouTube as well, but my computer got really angry, so I had to stop that. I'm everywhere. You can find me kayPOWXD, or if you want to go somewhere and click a bunch of things, kayPOWXD.com/links. I play a lot of fantasy MMOs. I'm especially loving Elder Scrolls Online, of course, and World of Warcraft at the moment. I got back to that. I know, I sold my soul again. Whoops. And obviously Fallout 76, because I love that too. It's also coming up to festive season. So if you come along to the stream in December and subscribe, you can get yourself a Christmas quacker. And if you don't know what that means, it's fine. Shush. Shut up, Christmas quackers. It's not time yet. You'll have to find out what that means. You have to come along. Sorry, I can't spoil everything. I spoiled a lot today, but I won't spoil the Christmas quackers.
Love that. And yeah, again, we'll put links to everyone's things they've mentioned that you can easily find them. But thank you so much all for joining us for this deep dive. It's been great.
No, thank you all for giving your thoughts and spending some time with us. And thank you everyone for listening. If you got to this point, I'm going to guess you enjoyed it. So if you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a future episode and more deep dives into different stories. And you can also give us a 5-star rating and review because that helps us reach new listeners and fans of story discussions. You can also share direct links. That works too. Anyway, you can get the show out. It all helps. We're story creators ourselves, and you can discover our manga universe online. We've got all our titles, including the soon-to-be the latest title, Origin Against All Odds, which we will be sharing in the run-up to Christmas as we pull it all together. Kickstarter backers will have some stuff to see, but yeah, eventually everyone will get to see the latest story. You can also join our Studio 77 Discord and consider becoming a member to support the work that we do at Maya Matter. We have a couple events for our Do I Look Like a Gamer video game representation campaign before we basically copy and paste and do it all again next year. But hopefully bigger and better, as they say. More impact. Impact's the main thing. So yeah, check that out. Got the game jam coming up, got the end of year live stream, and then if you are potentially interested in being part of the campaign 40 for 2025, then yeah, get in touch. looklikeagamer.com. We'll be doing photo shoots early in the year, probably February and March, well, as we did this year. And then you can also take part in the events that take place over the year as well. As for the podcast, we release new episodes on Thursdays, and those include creator interviews, video game discussions, and deep dives into stories across pop culture. You can always give us a shout directly. Our email address is studio77@myamatter.com, and our website with links to subscribe is myamatter.com/storyxstory. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, it's not about a destination, but keeping your fingers along the way. Take care, everyone.